Okay, let's get down to it. Been away for a while because we've had 3 weeks of a heat wave over 30 degrees. Of course, this is bringing out all the climate change deniers who are saying, yes, I'm burning to a crisp, but this is completely natural. But never mind, I am burning to a crisp. It doesn't feel very natural. But anyway, here we go. So this is a first of a series of 6 I think I want to do about what I call a reality in reverse polarity. So what's happened is that we've got something called hyperstition happening, which is where we have belief systems which are kind of based on illusions, but which have become accepted as real and a sort of shared truth, to the point where these what would have been considered kind of superstitions have become reality. And it's why a lot of people feel that they're either living in a completely insane world that doesn't make sense. They're feeling gaslit. Now, gaslit, it comes from the film Gaslight, and in this house, the man was trying to drive his wife insane, and he was doing it by moving pictures on the wall so that she'd walk in and the picture had moved, and she thought, "Is it me?" Or and one of the things that happened was that the gas lamps were going on and off. So yeah, it does feel like we're all some of us are going insane, but it depends which group of people we're talking about, because some people think that we're achieving a new form of sanity at last after a long period of a sort of madness, or what they would call, I guess, wokeness. Now, you know that I believe that the whole idea of woke has been conceived basically by the right wing. Now, of course, we do hear things that are exceptional and a bit weird, but by and large, it's a kind of invention. I mean, at the heart of woke is just the simple fact that we don't now find it acceptable to be abusive towards certain people, and we moderate our language in a way. We respect. It's actually the Christian values, actually. So it's a bit weird that the Christian right are the people who are really anti-woke. But anyway, that's another subject. So reality in reverse polarity. So this is the sort of thing you'd expect Scotty to say in Star Trek. He might come and say, "The engines have gone into reverse polarity, Captain." So think of it as topsy-turvy, and I'm talking about lies becoming truth, truth becoming lie, and science becoming superstition, superstition becoming science. And a lot of us just think, well, this isn't a world worth fighting for, actually. I've got kids. I don't particularly want them in this world. I think it's ridiculous having to navigate through this kind of madness. Now, we're hoping that this madness might die down. Things might there may become... I've said on previous videos that I don't believe that's going to happen, that there will be no shared values, but what might happen is some extreme catastrophe or extreme crisis, like war, famine, or a kind of COVID situation again, which kind of will kind of bring people back into the sanity or normality that we in a way were trying to achieve after the Second World War, which now has been largely dismantled for complex reasons. So yeah, so lies, if you think lies, mistruths, fairy tales, superstition, all that stuff has kind of metamorphosized into truth, and vice versa. And this is a little bit weird because it goes against the ideas of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was an idea where we could where we could kind of hunt objective truth, and that would be a sort of catapult into a better future. But that's all gone. I mean, let's look at three things that have happened very recently, which were completely based on lies. Now, I don't want to go into this in a big way and alienate everybody, but Brexit was based on a complete lie. Nobody really understood what the European Union was really about. Yes, of course, there was a lot of bureaucracy involved in it, but it was about a lot of shared understanding, and of course the freedom of movement as well, and sharing science, sharing educational programs, standardizing safety, food issues, that kind of thing. And of course now we can see that actually on every scale, Brexit didn't really make any sense. I mean, it was a visceral thing, it was all based on, I want my country back, that kind of thing. Well, none of that has all materialised, of course. It doesn't make any difference to the people in Scunthorpe. The Welsh farmers can't sell their beef. It doesn't, or lamb. It was really a waste of time and just caused more problems than it did solutions. And especially in a time where we really need to have friends in this world. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But, if you want to get into the detail, then there's plenty of stuff out there as to the sort of propaganda really that was spread around, and how people ignored simple facts and preferred to cast their opinion on the basis of I don't know, some kind of, is it a tribal feeling? I mean, maybe that's at the heart of it. But anyway, that's something I would consider was not based on simple truths. The other thing is obviously Donald Trump in the White House. Now, Donald Trump's in the White House by popular vote. You can't argue with that. But, if you fact check, which a number of fact checking agencies did, including Washington Post and many others, Washington Post, which of course supports Trump, because Jeff Bezos is now in charge, has bought it. They said they fact checked, I think it was 30,100 lies. That's statements he made. These aren't like sort of, odd quips here and there. These are the statements he made, 30,100 that were in opposition to the truth. Okay, so obviously we have moved into a parallel reverse polarity world now. It doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter. People just believe it. I suppose like you might believe a faith. It's faith-based, isn't it? Because it's obviously not science-based. It's not fact-based. It's not based on statistics. It is simply based on a kind of weird belief system. Well, that's fine if that's the way the world wants to go. If we want to go... See, the Enlightenment turned us away from that kind of belief system, the superstitions and the fairy tales and the ideas that the kind of moon was a god. We moved away and sought a new path. And now that's all dismantled. We're going back to a path where it doesn't really matter what anybody says, as long as it's within the sphere of our kind of visceral belief system. And so, that's what's happening with Trump. And then this other thing that may be happening with Gaza, all of us in complete delusion about the fact that what we're seeing in front of us on the TV is a form of genocide, a form of torture, a form of sort of mass punishment. You can just see it. I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm not making a big political statement here, but it's quite clearly there. In fact, there was a huge demonstration just here in the city that I live in yesterday. I got caught up in that. And, people screaming, stop killing our babies, that kind of thing. This is very depressing stuff. We can all see it, but nothing's actually really, there's no will particularly to stop it for all sorts of reasons that I'm not going to go into here. The point about that, though, is that although we are witness to this awful famine, this mass slaughter, it's the people who are protesting against this who are actually being condemned as terrorists. So that's, come on, whichever side the fence you're on, if you're on a fence. And as I said earlier in a previous video, sometimes it's better to believe in nothing than it is to just take an oppositional, contrary belief. You don't have to just disappear down the rabbit hole because you don't necessarily believe in climate change. You can just believe in nothing, and that's okay too. But is it better to believe in nothing than something if that something is bull? I don't know. But can you see with these three things I've mentioned, Brexit, Trump, what's happening in Gaza, the fact that people who are protesting are being labelled as terrorists, and that's legislation through the British government, it's all weird, topsy-turvy, reverse polarity. It's a bit weird. That's what I think anyway. And one more thing. Take a look at the health secretary in the US, JFK Jr. So he's a health secretary. He's a quack. He is a kind of health conspiracy nut. He's not really somebody you would want in charge of your child if your child had leukemia. I mean, really, you'd really want him out of the room. But kind of so he kind of even the medical establishment, even the science of medicine, which has saved my life many times. I really wouldn't be here if it wasn't for pharmaceutical companies, and I'm not saying they're great, and of course they do capitalize, but I would be dead 3 times over if it wasn't for the people that JFK Jr. Thinks are kind of like sort of conspiratorial crazy people, and he wants to replace it with his form of quackery, his form of snake oil medicine, and what have you. So everything's changed round now. It's a bit weird, and as I said, I mean, I wonder even whether my kids should even be involved in this world. Actually, when I see this reverse polarity world, so truth sounds insane, and lies are common sense. Not much we can do about that. That's kind of what's happening, what's creeping in, and this is causing these divisions that I've talked about quite a lot of times before. It's a reality inversion. Everything is inverted. Facts are flipped. Logic is reversed. Reason has been abandoned. Reason, that was the point of the Enlightenment, that reason should take over from superstition, and now it's reversed. Everything has reversed. It's being clawed back. And for what reason? I'll think about over the course of the whole 6, because at the heart of all this, I think, is at the heart of, at the heart of it is all sorts of things. Okay, it's to do with psychology, it's to do with power, it's to do with all sorts of things, but it's also to do with that old, I'm afraid, horror show called fascism. And when I talk about fascism, I don't think I'm not sure people really understand what fascism really means. Because if you look at the word fascism, it actually means a tightly wound bundle of sticks, or sheaf. So you've got this bundle of sticks. Think of those as people, and they're tightly bound. So the state is binding the people. Okay, so you're trapped, if you like. You're trapped within the state. Now, the state, what is the state? The state comprises of ideas, beliefs, and values. Okay, and you have to belong to the state and believe in exactly the same beliefs and values, concepts, ideas, beliefs as the state itself. So you cannot exist outside. You can't think for yourself at all. If you do, you will be punished. You'll be ostracized. You might be killed. You'll certainly be demonized. You would have been, excommunicated. It doesn't matter. The point is, you can't exist in that place without exactly the shared ideas of the state itself. You have to become the mouthpiece of the state. That's why in fascist countries, anybody who wants to say anything which doesn't follow the exact values of the states has to do it in a quiet room, and make sure they're not overheard. Okay, so it's a really unpleasant, horrible thing, unless, of course, you believe that absolutely everybody within the state should believe exactly what you believe, and you believe the state is upholding your own particular values. And that's why this thing is coming in the US because it's basically a kind of it's a false neo-Christian state, isn't it? It claims to be based on Christian values, but of course it's probably the most un-Christian country there is, if you actually look at it. So it's a kind of weird thing, but it's all very well wanting to be in populism. If you want to vote for a state which upholds exactly your values and doesn't allow anything else outside of those values, well, I don't know. Maybe that's a good idea if it's upholding your values, But, you know, the state can change, and maybe it won't uphold all of your values. Maybe there'll be a little part of your personality that will become actually not part of the values of the state, and you yourself will be persecuted one day. I don't like the idea of it at all, and I would run 100 miles. I would run away, basically, if I felt it was coming, and I do feel it's coming to some extent. Not so much here, but pretty much everywhere else. So everything now is controversial. Even a simple scientific fact, or even a social fact, what we used to think was a social fact. As a social scientist, that's particularly what I'm interested in. What used to be kind of obvious is now at best contentious. It is contended, you know, by a lot of people. What happened in the Enlightenment was that suddenly, you know, science became one of the dominant disciplines, and we got involved in logic, and as a consequence of that, rational debate. There's no rational debate now. You know, I mean, what the only rational debate, you know, it's just between two people who agree with each other, like Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan, who can sort of sit there and sort of, you know, talk about how, you know, what geniuses they are at kind of sussing everything out. And of course, all of this stuff on YouTube, this included, is just a whole bunch of noise. I mean, it's just people contending what used to be obvious. And, you know, I understand that it's an attractive noise, you know, because it will tell you, it will reinforce your own beliefs. It will tell you what you want to hear. It will kind of make you feel a little bit smug inside. And probably more importantly, by flicking through and not doing anything else whatsoever, you're stuck in that little bubble. You don't have to think. You don't have to think about your death. You don't have to think about whether you're right or wrong. You don't have to think about whether you've been a good or a bad person. You don't have to think about, you know, anything about, you know, politically that's a kind of a bit of a hot potato, you know, like why am I watching thousands of kids die every day and no one is doing anything about it? You know, you can just sit there watching sort of Jordan Peterson go on about his clean his room and kind of feel a bit good about yourself. You know, it is a whole load of noise. So in the Enlightenment, you know, there was this idea that reason, truth, and free speech as well, free speech was going to, but free speech that was, I'm not going to say filtered, but free speech that was at least based on, you know, either strong philosophical or scientific or evidentially based, you know, ideas. It wasn't just people spouting off nonsense or just, you know, making a lot of money like people like Russell Brand, who have just completely changed from being a reasonable, socially minded person coming out of difficulties in his life to an absolutely rabid conspiracy theorist, extreme right wing. I mean, can I use the word nutter? Am I allowed to use that word? Probably not. You know, he actually wrote some quite good books. He was quite a good writer actually once. But, you know, so I'm not talking about that kind of free speech where he's just rambling incoherently for 30 minutes at people. Yeah, so we used to have something called truth, but now the truth is relative or it's contentious, or in fact the opposite is true. Because you go from contending truth, saying, well, it might not be quite that way, to actually saying, no, it's the opposite. And now this is a gut reaction now. You know, this is why these are the divisions. We've kind of strangled emotion now and sort of turned it into something that we can manipulate and you know, have authority over. That's a bit weird. Science now is really based on superstition. We're all paranoid. We're paranoid about everything now. We're paranoid about the neighbours. We're paranoid about the black people. We're paranoid about the immigrants. We're paranoid about the about the governments. We're paranoid about the broadcasts. We're paranoid about the newspapers. We're paranoid about absolutely everything. We've become totally paranoid figures. And as I said before, paranoia is a normal part of fear psychology. So it's only taking fear, but then if you take fear and you magnify it and you're stuck in that bloody YouTube algorithm thing where everything's being reinforced, you know, of course you're going to go from fear to paranoia. I mean, that's normal, and that's exactly what's happening. You know, journalism now is journalism. What is journalism? Propaganda. Now, when I went to journalism school a long time ago, it was like it was a discipline. You learned how to become a journalist. You learned how to write. You learned how to present facts. You learned how to seek truth. You learned how to try and find balance. And and now now there's no such thing anymore. People either journalists are propaganda machines because they just write polemics for outlets which have an objective, a political objective. Someone like Fox News, okay, which is just a kind of, what is Fox News? I don't know what it is. It's a very peculiar TV station in America, but yeah. So now you're in a situation where, take something like the BBC. Now, many of you, well, I don't know whether it's you or not, but the BBC has got caught up, like many institutions, because we're very suspicious and paranoid about institutions. Has got caught up in an idea that that it's a kind of left-wing propaganda channel, or it's woke or something. All right. So the BBC, right, which has thousands of fully trained 30-year experienced journalists. They went to university, they did 3 or 4 years, and then they learnt their craft, and then they go into the world. I'm talking about like the BBC World Service or something, reporting from Tanzania, reporting from Eritrea, reporting from all around the world, okay? The finest people in the business, Reuters people as well, the staff there, I know them, the press association. It's a well-oiled, well-qualified machine, which has a huge amount of it has fact checkers, it has clear editorial policy, and an editorial quality. You can't really deny that. You can shout at me as much as you want about, if you don't believe me, but that's the truth. It's a very fine journalistic organisation, and but the fact is that people now, they want to either defund, demonise, close down, shut down. They can't stand the BBC. It's got wrapped up in this whole political movements of the day, and what they want instead, what they desire instead, is they like the noise of YouTube and people shouting garbage down YouTube. These media stations, it doesn't matter whether it's Piers Morgan, it doesn't matter whether it's Talk TV, it doesn't matter whether it's Joe Rogan, it doesn't matter whether it's GB News, it doesn't matter whether it's any of these outlets, it doesn't matter whether it's individuals like me who are just staring at a fucking phone. That's what it wants. And stuff like the New Culture Forum, absolutely appalling kind of organisations that are kind of selling news as, but which is really nothing but an aggressive polemic, actually, whatever they're, normally on the extreme right, and that's what they want instead, and they think that that's kind of more nutritious in a way. I don't know. It seems very peculiar to me. Now, by now, if you haven't. By now you've probably turned off because you don't like the sound of this, but there you go. So, there's no facts based on evidence. It's not about what is said, it's about who says it. Now, what's that got to do with a fact? Russell Brand's going on like that, yeah? What, but people have bought into that, to him, subscribed or whatever, but it's just absolute rubbish. I don't know. It's just, I'm interested in the phenomena. I'm not, I'm just interested, in why things have happened like this. I don't know whether or not, I wonder how much of this has got to do with tribalism. I haven't really got time to talk about it now. It's getting really hot in here, but I'm just wondering whether this is a new form of tribalism to some extent, and. In a way, is it like a football crowd? If you're a football supporter and you're standing at the Chelsea end, right? Okay, and there's how many of you? 40,000 of you? There's 40,000 of you. And there's 11 little men in blue chasing around the football. you know, and you are screaming, you are crying, you are singing, you are shouting, you know, you're getting drunk afterwards, you're wearing the kit, you've got the scarf, you know, and you know, if you deconstruct that, what's really happening? Why is a grown man in that position, really, to an extent? Why is he living vicariously through these 11, 22-year-olds who are kicking around a football on a pitch? You know, it's worthy of, I mean, obviously there's been a hell of a lot of, you know, social science on this, but if you were really to deconstruct it, it's kind of quite a weird phenomena, isn't it? You know, a little bit. And remember, the Enlightenment, the idea was that there were divisions back then, of course, big divisions. And one of the points of the Enlightenment is that it was an idea that the learning truth, truth is not a weird concept. It can be found out. But the idea of the Enlightenment was that truth would kind of unite us all, actually, because people would be able to, using evidence, they'd be able to say, well, actually, pragmatically, this is good, this is right, this is okay, you know. But and we were united for a while, you know, post Second World War, but that's gone now. Without truth, there's no accountability. You can say what you want, you can do what you want, you can be who you want. It doesn't really matter, okay? You know, because there's no truth, there's no objective truth, and how can you be accountable to anybody? We can't really have a real democracy either without some form of shared reality. I mean, democracy now is changing. And the only way that it can survive is that we will have to change the way that we do things. For example, in the UK, we have a two-party system that doesn't really work anymore. Anyway, those are my thoughts really about this inversion of truth and lies. I think it's really serious and incredibly damaging. Sad. I wouldn't want to bring a child into this world if I had another choice. And a lot of people are either provoking these lies and these divisions for fun, to some extent, for money, for drama, for clicks. And there are other people who are manipulating them for very unpleasant reasons. People who are very powerful. I hope that in your day-to-day life, you're not really kind of bothered by any of this. But it's really getting harder and harder, isn't it, to live what we used to think was a kind of ordinary, normal life, you know. It's hard. It's creeping in. Anyway, there you go. It's too hot to go on anymore today. That's my thoughts. And I'll be back tomorrow or next day with part 2 of this. Okay, thanks.